Happy Christmas everyone, I hope you've all had an amazing time and thank you so much for all your likes, comments and support throughout this year. 2023 has been amazing for my solar journey, my EV journey and my YouTube journey, and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you that's helped me along the way. Stay tuned for this one as well, as I think those of you who are looking to maybe get solar or already have solar might find this video informative and useful. Welcome to my 1 year review of my solar install. In this video I'll be discussing how my solar panels have performed since they were installed on the 19th of January 2022 versus what I anticipated. I'll also be talking about the return on my investment for the solar panels as well, and also what we can expect over the next 12 months, and also whether I have any regrets installing the system I did. So stay tuned. Hi everyone, I'm Dan EV Solar. And if you are new to these videos, I'm based in the northeast of England, and in December 2022 I had a solar panel and home battery system installed. The install consisted of 16 395 watt Trina solar panels, a GivEnergy 5 kilowatt hybrid Gen 1 inverter, and a GivEnergy 9.5 kilowatt hour Gen 2 battery. I had 6 of the panels installed on the east facing roof and 10 on the west facing roof, so a total system size of 6.32 kilowatts peak, and the battery and inverter were installed in the corner of my garage that I had spare. My thinking behind the configuration of the panels is that I get some morning generation from the east facing roof and then some evening generation from the west facing roof, and that was when they coincided with my home usage most of the time. I'll talk more about that later. The system cost was £10,980, so just under £11,000, and it was installed by UCS Renewables, who are also based in the northeast. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check them out and get a quotation from them. They did a great job of the install and I've had no issues whatsoever within the first 12 months. So let's first take a look at some of the calculations that I did when I first had this system installed. One of the most useful tools that I found when I was looking to get solar installed was the PVGIS tool. I'll also link that in the description, but what this does is this provides a pretty accurate estimate of what your solar install is likely to generate based on your circumstances and where you're located in the world. And if we look at the site, okay, this isn't exactly where I live, but it's close enough. And if we plug in the details for my east facing roof, so that's 395 watt panels times by 6, we get a total generation across the year for the east array of 1,727 kilowatt hours. And for the 10 395 watt panels on the west facing roof, that gives us an annual generation of 2,839 kilowatt hours. So if we add those together, that gives an overall expected total for the year of 4,566 kilowatt hours. And if we look at my actual generation from the 19th of December 2022 to the 18th of December 2023, what we actually generated was 4,807 kilowatt hours. So not too far off the estimate from PVGIS, just slightly exceeding, which is great, and that's exactly what we want to see. And if we compare the actual generation versus those predictions, as you can see, the winter, early spring and autumn generation was pretty close to what actually happened. The slight drop in between May and July that the PVGIS site predicted in June did not actually materialise, and June was by far our best month across the course of the year, where, if I remember correctly, we had a lot of sunshine during that month. As you can see from these graphs, there's a massive difference between the summer and winter generation. I think if this was a south facing roof, I would expect a better winter generation, but the sun just doesn't get high enough in the sky in the winter months for an east-west array to make a meaningful difference. The good thing is that this can be massively offset by the generation in summer, when we have more than enough solar to power our home needs and also can export a lot back to the grid as well. The most generation that I had throughout the year was on the 3rd of June, where I generated 41.28 kilowatt hours. And if you bear in mind my average daily usage is between 4 and 7 kilowatt hours, so you can see the amount that we have spare. And I actually generated over 40 kilowatt hours twice throughout the year using my system. The worst day by comparison for generation was actually December the 3rd, where I generated 0. The panels were covered in snow, so that was the first day I generated absolutely nothing, which was a shame, but as I'm on the Octopus Intelligent Tariff now, and charging overnight, it didn't really matter too much, and the generation for the day, if the snow wasn't there, probably would have been quite low anyway. And if we move on to look at tariffs, I switched tariffs a couple of times throughout the year. So by around February 2023, we were pretty much self-sufficient, so the solar panels with the longer days starting were generating more than I was using throughout the month, which was great, and that happened much earlier than I anticipated. So in March, I moved across to a new tariff that was introduced by Octopus called OCTOPUS FLUX. I have a video specifically on this tariff on my channel, so be sure to check that out. I'll link that in the description. And while you're there, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more similar content. And also, if you're looking to switch to Octopus Energy for their innovative tariffs, such as OCTOPUS FLUX, then click on the link that's also in the description and on the screen now. If you sign up to Octopus Energy, you get £50 just for signing up, and I also get £50 as well. And the OCTOPUS FLUX tariff was fantastic for me throughout the spring, summer and autumn months, as I could export a lot of electricity that I generated throughout the summer months in particular, and definitely between the 4 and 7 PM peak period that Flux offers, where Octopus were paying around about 35 pence per kilowatt hour for everything exported. My west facing panels also worked well here, as well as they generated long into the evening, in particular during that peak time, which allowed me to export more back to the grid. And this in turn allowed me to increase my earnings. For example, in June this year, I made over £220 through the savings made on my bills and what I exported back to the grid, which was fantastic. However, whilst Flux was great for me throughout the summer and spring months, once the generation dropped off around about September time, I noticed a significant difference with what I was exporting back to the grid. Plus by then I had the addition of my Tesla Model 3 in the mix as well, which I bought in June, and because I had an EV, this meant that I could move to the Intelligent Octopus tariff as well, which gives me a really cheap rate overnight to charge the car, and also I can charge my home battery as well, and that makes the overall energy usage really cheap throughout the day. I switched to this around about the middle of September, and I've also made a video on the Intelligent Octopus tariff as well, which you can check out here. And around about the same time, just before actually I switched to this, Octopus increased their export rate on this tariff from 4.1 pence per kilowatt hour to 15 pence per kilowatt hour, which made the tariff extremely attractive. And I've been on that tariff ever since, exporting back to the grid, filling my battery up to 100%, and then anything that's generated during the day goes back to the grid. And that's worked out really well for me. I'll have to do the sums next year to figure out which tariff is best, but I suspect with this increased export rate, it's probably comparable to be on either Flux or Intelligent Octopus with an EV. So I'll do the sums next year and let you know what I find. Speaking of financial benefits, let's take a look at how the solar performed throughout the year financially and how the payback's looking. I'll drop a copy of the spreadsheet that I'm looking at in the description below, so feel free to take a look, and if you find it useful, it would be great if you could click on the super thanks that's below this video, or also click the link to buy me a coffee if you found it useful, or even just a like on the video would be great as well. If we look at this chart, this was what I plotted out before I had the solar installed, using the knowledge I had from various quotations that I got from a number of installers, plus the research that I'd done independently as well. As you can see, for the first year I predicted slightly higher than the generation from the PVGIS calculator predicted, and this was based on other comparisons I'd seen where people had higher results than what the PVGIS site had predicted. So I'd estimated around about 5,000 kilowatt hours for the year, and this was slightly below, and I think with better weather in the autumn and winter we may have achieved that, but it wasn't meant to be this year. And if we look at the breakdown of the figures for home usage, battery usage and solar generation usage, I'm actually quite impressed that I got these predictions this close for the percentage usage, as this was purely educated guesswork based on my previous year's electricity usage, and I used that to roughly calculate what I would use on the home, and then from that working out what I would export, and then basically split the two between what would go into the home and the battery. So if you look at my predictions, they were that 64% of all my generation would be exported back to the grid. In reality, I exported 57%. Solar to use for home consumption, I predicted 18%. The actual was 17%. And solar going to my GivEnergy battery, I predicted 18%. And the actual total was 26%, so not too far off. Again, as always, there were many assumptions here. It's very important that you do your own sums for this. and this could change throughout the years, but for the first year it looks pretty accurate. And then for what I exported, I was basing this on a rate of 20 pence per kilowatt hour, which at the time may have seemed a little optimistic, but my plan was to move to the Agile tariff, which during the midst of the energy crisis, the Agile tariff was paying a lot more than this at certain times. And when the Flux tariff was introduced, this actually increased the rate that I was expecting to get from around about 20 pence with that peak export rate at 35 pence. I think my average over the summer was around about 25 pence per kilowatt hour that I was getting for export. So that helped increase the payback, which was great. And for the whole year, I predicted that the overall benefit to me would be £1,252 in savings from both what I wasn't paying for electricity and what I gained from export. And this gave an overall payback at some point during the 7th year after the install. So how did this compare to reality? Well, actually what I have earned in the first year has been £1,331.19. So slightly higher than predicted. However, there's no denying that having solar and a battery install have really helped me when taking part in the saving sessions throughout the year. You can check out my video about saving sessions in the top right corner, but if we add that total to what we earned overall, including the saving sessions, that equates to annual savings of £1,551.41. So if you continue at that rate, then the overall system payback would be around about 6 to 7 years. There's also the EV fuel, electricity savings, whatever you want to call it, to cater as well, although I didn't actually use anything from the solar to charge the EV. I could have done, that would have powered it during the summer. I would have had more than enough energy to do that, but it just didn't make economical sense when I could charge it for 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour on the Intelligent Octopus tariff. So I can't really contribute that to the solar, but I do include that in my monthly figures. So if you want to check them out, take a look at my monthly stats videos. And that takes us nicely onto why I installed solar in the first place. So if you take a look back at the very first video I did on YouTube back in March, still one of my best performing videos to date, there were 4 reasons that I listed for installing solar. One of which was the flexibility that having solar and a home battery gives. You're less reliant on the grid, which is fantastic. The second of which is the financial benefits. So I saw this as an investment that I want to pay back. I think this was a good way to invest my money at the time with the energy crisis, and I still do. There's also the environmental benefits, which I think everyone should be doing their bit where they can to help. I understand that not everyone has the expense to install a solar system, but if every one of us can do our own bit, then it's bound to help the world. And there's also the fact that I like new tech. There's a lot of new tech in the renewable space at the moment. I found it really interesting, still do, and I think there's an exciting future there with a lot of new tech coming online. I think it's fair to say that having solar panels and a home battery installed have at least met my expectations for those 4, in some cases exceeded them. And if we look at each one of those in more detail, one of the main reasons was, as I mentioned, the flexibility that solar panels give you as a user. You have the choice what to do with the energy that you generate, which I think is a great place to be in, and this is what I've seen from my own experience. As I mentioned earlier, if I wanted to, I could have charged my electric vehicle up using the power that the solar panels generated, and it just gives you options to use your power how you want to use it when you want to use it. For example, I can choose to utilise as much of the energy as I want or export it back to the grid for a financial gain, which also helps my neighbours power their homes as well, which is a nice feeling. The tariff choice, it gives me options to go on tariffs such as Octopus Flux, again where I can make good money from the export with my west facing panels during that peak 4 to 7 PM period. And also the saving sessions as well, I can do my part for the grid then, help the environment and also benefit financially from it as well. But one of the big benefits is the fact that you're sheltered from the price fluctuations that we've seen in the markets the past few years. Although energy prices have come down, which is great now for those who are struggling to pay the bills, we're still protected if the prices fluctuate again, which could happen, I guess, at any time. From the financial side, it also looks like a pretty good investment at the moment as well. I've discussed the returns on the system for the first year, and I have no plans to move home for the foreseeable future as well. So as long as I stay here for 6 to 7 years until the system pays back, then everything after that is pure profit. And if we look at that return as an annualized return, that equates to around about 14%, which is much more than the bank are giving us for our money at the moment. So I slightly oversized my system based on the original quotation that I was given because I wanted to future-proof it as everything moved towards electricity. And I think this was a wise decision. I do plan on getting a heat pump in the not too distant future, which will further increase my electricity usage, so having the additional panels and also the extra storage will really help when it comes to the heat pump. Now, one potential caveat that I maybe see here is that within the next 5 to 10 years, as more renewables such as wind and solar come online, what we may find is that we have an excess of wind and solar generation throughout a windy summer day, for example, and also enough generation of energy even on the worst days of the year. So what this will mean is maybe on a windy summer's day, for example, there'll be too much energy, and then what will happen is energy suppliers will likely give this energy to the customer for free, or even pay you to take the energy and use it. And we've already seen this with the likes of the Octopus Agile tariff, where particularly over the Christmas period where it's been really windy, customers have been paid that are on that tariff, maybe 3-4 pence per kilowatt hour to use energy from the grid overnight. And that's great for those with home battery storage, where they can use that cheap power, get paid for it, but then also use the battery during the day to avoid drawing from the grid at peak times. So there's maybe an argument to just get a home battery installed and maybe not do solar. I think solar will still be a big benefit, as I mentioned, for the reasons I've talked about previously. And as I say, I'm definitely not an expert. This is just what I've read and my prediction based on the research that I've done. But yeah, maybe just installing a battery might be something for you to look at, especially from February 2024 when the batteries become VAT free to install. You don't need a solar install alongside the battery to not pay the VAT on that install. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. What do you think, and how is the energy market going to look in maybe 5 to 10 years? In my opinion, it's going to be very different. Obviously, the environment is another big beneficiary with solar and home battery installs. It's great to say that I'm doing my bit to make the world a greener place, helping to power my neighbours' houses and also helping the energy transition as well. And as for the new tech part, as I mentioned, I absolutely love new tech, and the GivEnergy app has kept me thoroughly entertained throughout the year, watching what my solar panels have generated and also checking the battery percentage throughout the day as well. The data and statistics I can now generate are brilliant, and of course this helps me to help you, my viewers, to make an informed decision if you're considering installing solar for yourselves. I cannot fault the GivEnergy equipment, which has worked absolutely flawlessly since the day it was installed, and I would highly recommend it to others as well. So finally, do I have any regrets with what I installed? What would I have done differently, and would I recommend installing solar? I think you can guess the answer to that one. And to be honest, overall, I'm really happy with what I got installed. Oversizing that for my usage, I think was a great move, and future-proofs me a little bit for the likes of heat pumps and my EV. And I would definitely recommend getting solar and a home battery installed if you're thinking of doing it yourself, especially the GivEnergy equipment, which is fantastic. I think probably the biggest thing I would have liked to have changed is the inverter choice. So when I got my system installed, it was just after the COVID supply chain issues that we had, and the installers only had Gen 1 inverters available. Even though I was quoted for a Gen 2 inverter, they were out at the time, but there was just no supply anywhere. In the end, I went for the Gen 1 inverter, but in reality I probably would have only been waiting a month or two extra to get the Gen 2 installed. Of course, now GivEnergy have released their Gen 3 inverter, which again is a step up in functionality from the Gen 2 version. And either the Gen 2 or the Gen 3 would have given me a discharge rate from the battery of 3.6 kilowatts instead of the 2.6 kilowatts that I got from the Gen 1 inverter. And this would have helped me out in a number of situations, one of which is the saving sessions, which I've discussed. It would have allowed me to export at a higher rate and also export during the peak period on the Octopus Flux Tariff as well. And although it's only a kilowatt extra across the 12 saving sessions throughout the year, this would have added up, exporting that additional capacity from the battery back to the grid. And there's also a number of times throughout the year as well where we may have had, for example, the oven on, and we've also boiled the kettle at the same time, and that draws from the grid because it's using more than the 2.6 that the battery can provide, and the 3.6 would have just given us a bit extra flexibility there. So that's probably my main regret. Not massive, but something I might look to upgrade in the future maybe. I did also consider installing more panels than what I have to try and cover my winter usage a bit more, Now, I'll probably have space on my west facing roof to add another 15 panels on if I wanted to. It really is a big roof space and would benefit from the solar generation well into the evening for the summer months. However, it would have meant an upgraded inverter, so maybe not the worst decision to stick with what I got. And I'm not sure they would have ever paid back. So what else is in the pipeline for 2024? Well, as I mentioned, I'm seriously considering getting a heat pump installed. I've done a few videos on this that you can check out on my channel, and I've also had a formal quotation from OCTOPUS for this. This would mean changing my hot water supply, my heating supply, and also my gas hob as well. I'm a little reluctant to do it at the moment because I don't use much gas for my boiler, and the boiler is only 5 years old and works perfectly. But I think longer term it would make sense to do this, so it's something I'm looking into. I may also look to install another 9.5 kilowatt hour GivEnergy battery, especially from February 2024 when the VAT's removed from it as well. I think this makes it a really reasonable price and would help with the heat pump usage if I planned on getting that installed. This would be a pretty easy retrofit, and I think without the VAT the prices look quite reasonable at the moment. And if I did get the heat pump installed, the additional capacity would certainly help as well. But for now, overall, I'm very happy with what I got installed. And like I said, the GivEnergy equipment is absolutely brilliant, and the app so easy to use and so easy to understand. And the technology has just worked, so if you would like a quotation, be sure to contact UCS Renewables. I'll leave their details in the description. Stay subscribed to follow my journey and see what happens next. And also, once again, thank you for everyone's support throughout this year. 2024 should be a very exciting year in terms of the new technology coming onto the market. We're seeing improved heat pump technology all the time, and also a number of new EVs coming to the market as well. And I'm also looking forward to seeing what the OCTOPUS Cozy 6 heat pump is capable of. Exciting times ahead. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.